What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. There's a lot to talk about this week in Commanders world. Not anything new per se, but there's a lot to talk about in terms of discussion. So, yeah, a lot of different topics. We'll start off here with another offensive coordinator update. Who's going to be the next offensive coordinator in Washington? I give my prediction, and some little bit of updates in terms of the Eric Bieniemy situation. So that'll get things started, and then I'm going to go over my top 5 biggest positions of need heading into the 2023 NFL offseason for the Washington Commanders. So that'll be the second topic here. And the third topic, the one big thing that happened for the Commanders this week was that it was the 1-year anniversary of the Washington Commanders switching from the Washington football team to the Washington Commanders on February 2nd, I believe, last year. And so over the last week or so, it was been 1 year since the switch. And the feedback under a lot of the posts for the Commanders was not that great. But we'll get more into that a little bit later. We'll get things started here with a little bit of an offensive coordinator update. And I talked about this last week. Eric Bieniemy came up as a big possibility for the Washington Commanders to have him as the new offensive coordinator in Washington, as I set up or I requested permission for an interview with Eric Bieniemy. But now, since Eric Bieniemy is in the Super Bowl, it's going to have to wait some time before we're going to be able to interview him. It's Super Bowl week. I'll actually give my predictions at the end a little bit as well, who I think will win the Super Bowl, because the next podcast episode that comes out will be after the Super Bowl. So it'll be the first episode of the off season. I do want to mention before we get into stuff as well, that the Senior Bowl and the East West Shrine Bowl, all that stuff, all the college all-star games happened in the last week or so as well. But I'm going to get to that in next week's episodes, as I'm going to have a guest on who went to Mobile, Alabama and but reported in Mobile about what was happening in the Senior Bowl and stuff. So we're going to talk to him and stuff next week about standouts, risers, fallers from all of the different all-star games. So I'm excited for that. But yeah, we'll start here with the Commanders' offensive coordinator update. Bieniemy, I talked about a little bit already. He has a real shot, it seems like, at getting the offensive coordinator job. It's between him and then also, so him in Washington and then him in Baltimore, as it feels like the Baltimore Ravens are also very interested in getting Eric Bieniemy to replace Greg Roman over there. So Bieniemy, once more, he is on an expiring contract after the game against the Eagles in the Super Bowl. He will not be on a specific staff unless the Chiefs re-sign him to an extension within the next week, which I think is very unlikely. I would not see that happening at all. I feel like Andy Reid also is kind of done with Bieniemy. I don't really know how that relationship is going, but it seems like it's not crystal clear what's happening between the two and the communication between the two. So Bieniemy will most likely be going on to Kansas City. Whether what team it goes to, I don't really know, but it seems like it's either going to be the Ravens or the Commanders. Also, I still think that Kansas Zampese is probably going to end up being the offensive coordinator. I think Bieniemy is either going to go to Baltimore or he's going to go to somewhere with a new head coach. We saw earlier that Frank Reich was able to get Jairo Rivero, the former Broncos defensive coordinator, and he brought him to the Panthers as their defensive coordinator over there in Carolina, which is huge hire for Frank Reich in that defense. And really, Frank Reich is such a great offensive mind, bringing in one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL right now to his team. We might see that a lot more. Eric Bieniemy could be going to another team, maybe teaming up with DeMeco Ryans in Houston, maybe, or I don't think he's going to go to Denver with Sean Payton. I'd be a little bit surprised there, but we might see him depending on who gets the head coaching job in Indianapolis. Who's going to be the head coach there and stuff, and might want to hire Eric Bieniemy. So I still think it's probably going to be Bieniemy to the Ravens, and then Ken Zampese will get promoted to offensive coordinator in Washington. But again, we probably will fall out of the race at some point for Bieniemy. I'd be pretty shocked if he would want to come to Washington with the entire head coaching situation, which, again, this head coaching stuff, pretty crazy. The offensive coordinator spot is really affected it, you could tell, because we are now in week 4 of searching for an offensive coordinator, maybe even week 5 now in searching for an offensive coordinator, and we still don't have one. We will not get a quarterback. I doubt we will get a quarterback if we're trying to trade for one until we get an offensive coordinator. So that will be interesting to see. Again, there's reports that Sam Howell or Ron Rivera was telling Ron Rivera was telling offensive coordinator or possible offensive coordinator candidates that Sam Howell was going to be the starter in 2023. So again, is that true? Is that not true? We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this week's offensive coordinator update. Not really that much, but it seems like Eric Bieniemy seems to have a real shot at the getting the job. All right, moving on to biggest positions of need for the Washington Commanders in 2023. I'll give you my top five. Starting off with an honorable mention, actually, I do want to talk about quarterback, because if we do go into 2023 with Sam Howell as our starting quarterback, we still need a backup quarterback because Taylor Heineke is going to be hitting free agency. And I have a good feeling Heineke will probably not be returning to Washington, because I feel with Ron Rivera potentially being gone after next season or before the end of next season, Heineke will probably not be wanted in Washington as much, even though he is an above average backup. I feel like he can get paid more in a different scenario as well. Maybe going in for a injury history quarterback, being a backup there. There's other teams that are willing to pay him a lot more money, so it'll be interesting to see if he wants to take a contract cut or like a price cut to stay in Washington. That'll be a little bit interesting to see. Wentz again is probably going to get cut. I think that's pretty much already decided between the organization. Wentz will probably get cut within the coming weeks, so that'll be something to watch as well. And then our third string quarterback this year was Sam Howell. He'll probably be the starter in 2023. So yeah, we only have one running back really on the roster for 2023. So whether it be through the draft and picking up a day 3 guy possibly, and Jaron Hall out of BYU, Dorian Thompson Robinson out of UCLA, Jake Haener out of Fresno State, Jake Haener out of Fresno State, or Clayton Tune out of Houston. There's a lot of guys that we could probably get in day 3 that could potentially be a backup to us, or maybe a third string quarterback in 2023. So, yeah, that'll be a little bit interesting to watch. That's my honorable mention. And now moving up one spot to number 5, I have tight end. Logan Thomas, I feel, is going to get cut this year. I don't think we'll be going into 2023 with Logan Thomas, or at least Logan Thomas on the contract that he's on right now. Also, he may retire. He is on the bad half of 30, as they say. So Logan Thomas may retire as well. John Bates hasn't looked good besides being able to block in his first 2 seasons in the NFL. And the rookie Cole Turner suffered multiple concussions and injuries during his rookie season. So we'll have some struggles at this tight end spot. Again, Turner didn't really turn into what I think people thought he would be after a very impressive first few days of training camp. A lot of people liked him going into training camp, and he didn't really turn out to be what people thought he would be, so far at least, which still got many years on his rookie contract, only through 1 year of his NFL career. So again, he could potentially turn into maybe a starter pass catcher. I don't really know if I see that going to 2023. And again, in free agency and in the draft this year, there's so many options at tight end. Tight end is one of the most stacked positions in terms of if you need a new one this offseason, you have a lot of options. In free agency, you have Mike Gesicki, Dalton Schultz, Evan Ingram, Hayden Hurst. All of those guys are going to be free agents. And in the draft, Matthew Mayer, who's going to be drafted sometime in round 1 most likely, Dalton Kincaid, Darnell Washington, among a lot of others in the day 2 to day 3 space. So there's a lot of options for the Washington Commanders in which way they want to go at the tight end spot. But I feel like there'll definitely be an addition, or at least one addition, to that tight end room in 2023, because Logan Thomas, I think, is going to be a cap cut this year. All right, moving on to number 4, I have the cornerback position. Kendall Fuller played well this season, but as well, it wasn't really anything special. And even though it seemed like on the field he was playing pretty solid, a lot of advanced stat metrics did not really say that he was playing great. It was a little bit below average, I would say, which is a little bit surprising because I haven't really heard his name much this year, which is good for a cornerback because you don't want your name to be heard if you're a cornerback on the field. And then also Benjamin St-Juste. He showed flashes this season, but he also let up some big plays. He was a big boomer bust type guy in coverage this year. So we definitely need to bring in another corner because we had Ratchet Wildgoose for many games being our nickel corner, and that did not look good throughout the entire 2023 season. This 2023 cornerback class is very deep. Christian Gonzalez, Devon Witherspoon, both going to go in round 1, and both will probably go in the top 22. Christian Gonzalez, a guy that I would love for the Washington Commanders to select at number 16. Devon Witherspoon, I have not gotten a chance to scout yet, but he'll probably be another guy that I would love to have on my team heading into 2023. There's also some guys deeper into day 2 into day 3 as well. Kelly out of Stanford and Cam Smith out of South Carolina. Cam Smith is a bigger corner. I think he's like 6'2", I want to say, a bigger corner, and then Keely Ringo as well, an athletic beast out of Georgia. So there's a lot of different options as well. We could go with this cornerback spot. That's why I don't really have it higher up, because even though we do have a solid starter in Kendall Fuller, Benjamin St-Juste, if he takes out a lot of these big plays that he let up in 2022, then he can become a very solid starter too, and maybe even a cornerback 1. But there's a lot of solid cornerback 2 to cornerback 3 guys we can get in free agency and we can get in the draft. I haven't even mentioned the free agency guys. You got Jonathan Jones, you got James Bradbury, and I didn't even know this, but Byron Murphy, the cornerback from the Arizona Cardinals, is a free agent as well. So he could also be an option if the Cardinals don't re-sign him, which I would think that the Cardinals will, because they're pretty much in a rebuilding stage right now, especially without a head coach. So that is something that I would expect them to re-sign. But if Byron Murphy does hit the open market, I would, in a heartbeat, try and sign him for whatever he wants, because he's a pretty solid cornerback too. All right, moving on to number 3, I have offensive tackle. Charles Leno, after having a good start to the season, had some injuries, dealt with some injuries, and it did not finish the season that great. And especially since he's on the older side of 30 years old as well, he could be retiring soon. He's on the older side. So I'm not really confident where this offensive tackle depth stands at right now. Sam Cosmi will probably move inside to right guard or left guard in 2023. And this 2023 offensive tackle class, I would say it's not like one of the strongest positions in the class, but it's not a weak position either. You have guys like DeJuan Jones, the right tackle of Ohio State, Paris Johnson Jr., the left tackle of Ohio State, Broderick Jones, the left tackle out of Georgia, among some other guys like Peter Skoronski, he plays offensive tackle at Northwestern, but he'll probably move inside once he gets to the NFL. So if we're looking for a guard too, I'll get more into that a little bit later. That's a little bit of a spoiler. But if we're looking for a guard too, then Peter Skoronski would probably be pretty solid. All right, moving on to number 2 now. I have linebacker. Jamin Davis took a sophomore year leap. I think we all have to give him praise because of that. He did not look great in his rookie season. 2023 or 2022, 2023 looked a lot better than in that 2021, 2022 season. I'm just going to say that. But besides Jamin Davis, I don't know if we have a single other linebacker on the roster heading into 2023, because Cole Holcomb, Khaleke Hudson, Milo Eifler, John Bostic, David Mayo, all of them are hitting the open market in the offseason this year. So I would love to bring Cole Holcomb back. I think he's a big-time part of this defense, and when he's healthy, he's one of the best players on this defense, especially if you don't include that front four. He's pretty much the best linebacker on this team when he's healthy. So I would love to bring him back. Khaleke Hudson was some good depth to say. I mean, he wasn't that great. Milo Eifler, John Bostic, David Mayo, they're all good depth pieces. John Bostic did not look great in that 2021-2022 season, and then he had a season-ending injury pretty early on this year. Milo Eifler, David Mayo had some playing time as well. So this linebacker room does not look great beyond Jamin Davis going into 2023. Plus, I'd love to see another leap that Jamin Davis could make in 2023, because right now he played a lot of outside linebacker. Then he switched into inside linebacker once Cole Holcomb got hurt. So I like to see a lot more of him in 2023. I'd like to see another leap, to say the least, because he's good right now, but wouldn't say it was a first-round pick worthy good. So I do think he needs to take another leap in 2023. As for the free agency and the draft class, there's not really a lot of good players, I would say. There's maybe one linebacker I would take in round 1, and that's Drew Sanders. And then Trenton Simpson could be argued as well. But those are the two main linebackers. There's a lot of guys possibly on day 3, a lot of older guys. Yeah, Ivan Pace Jr. out of Cincinnati, Ventrell Miller out of Florida, Muhammad Diabate out of Utah, and he also went to Florida as well, that we could possibly select down the board. But I don't know if really any of them are day 1 starters. Maybe Ivan Pace, but Pace would have to be selected on day 2, probably late day 2. But none of these guys really, I would say, are day 1 starters, or really that linebacker that we need as a centerpiece of this defense. Yeah, I mean, you have Jamin Davis. He got a lot of experience calling plays. We need another guy though that can team up with him. As terms of the free agency class, I actually would say it's a little bit better than the draft class because you have Kaiser White, you have T.J. Edwards, I believe, as well. Out of both of them coming from Philadelphia, who are playing the Super Bowl this week. So either of them additions to the Washington Commanders, and I'm happy. But again, this Washington team is not a team that a lot of players would want to go to because they're probably thinking there's a better chance that we go into 2024 with a new head coach than there is without. So that's something to look at. And then for the number one position, biggest position of need in 2023 or heading into 2023, I kind of combined two of them together. It's inside offensive line. You got center and you got guard. I think we need just pretty much all the entire offensive line, pretty much. You have Trey Turner. You got him on a 1 year deal. That experiment failed. Andrew Norwell did not play great this season. Wes Schweitzer, Tyler Larson, Nick Martin, all of them are free agents this season. Chase Roulier, I think there's a good chance he retires after having back-to-back season-ending leg injuries. So this offensive line, this inside offensive line, is going to be a struggle to rebuild this upcoming offseason. I would say you probably bring back Tyler Larson. He's a solid backup center in relief of Chase Roulier. He's gotten a lot of experience over the last 2 years with Roulier out. In terms of the draft, you got guys like Osiris Torrance out of Florida. You got Andrew Voorhees out of, I think Voorhees is out of USC, I'm pretty sure. John Michael Schmitz out of Minnesota. And then Peter Skoronsky, who I mentioned earlier. He plays offensive tackle, but we'll probably switch into a guard once he gets to the NFL. And we also have to mention that Sam Cosmi, maybe he does go back inside to right guard. Maybe he doesn't. That will definitely affect what Ron Rivera wants to build during this offensive line this upcoming offseason. But yeah, I'm hoping we make some moves during this offensive line because I don't want to be going into 2023 with Charles Leno as my left tackle, Sam Cosmi as my right tackle. I mean, maybe Cosmi, but not that much. But then inside Andrew Norwell and Trey Turner being my two guards, or Andrew Norwell and Wes Martin or Wes Schweitzer being my two guards, which is not great because towards the end of the season, especially, we saw how this offensive line, and we saw it at the beginning of the season too with Carson Wentz. This offensive line is not great, and especially if Ron Rivera wants to do this 2-1 pass ratio, and he's really emphasized wanting to run the football. We need a great offensive line, and the offensive line we have going into 2023 as of now is not great by any means at all. So we definitely need to make a splash in free agency and get either guard, a tackle, a center, just anyone that can actually block. And then also in the draft, I would expect us to take some names as well. Maybe Osiris Torrance at number 16, Andrew Voorhees later on in day 2, and John Michael Schmitz maybe later on in day 2, Luke Weipler out of Ohio State day 2, or late day 2, maybe early day 3, Peter Skoronsky. I don't know if we're gonna have to trade up for Peter Skoronsky if we want to draft him. I don't know if he will fall to 16, but that could also possibly be an option as well. All right, last thing on the agenda today or this week, 1 year of the Washington Commanders. I'm just gonna put my opinion out there. Yeah, I'm starting to get used to it. It is still a little bit weird. Moving from football team, just all the name changes over the last few years. It is a little bit weird, but at the end of the day, I don't really care as long as we win. And this year, we won for like a month and a half, and then we stopped winning. So as long as we win in 2023, I am happy. Whether if my opinion, if a new owner buys the team and they change the name again, I'm not really sure how I would feel about it right now because Commanders, it doesn't really feel right. I don't really know how to put it. It doesn't feel right. But then another new name, a third name change in 5 years, possibly, that would be something insane. And that would definitely be a record, first of all. But then, I don't know. That's just a lot. There's a lot to definitely talk about in terms of the Commander's name and their branding and stuff. So, yeah, that's pretty much it for this week's episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. Thank you guys for watching this episode. 1 year as well of Keeping Up with the Commanders after switching from Withcast to Keeping Up with the Commanders. This is episode probably like 31 or 32 overall of Keeping Up with the Commanders, and probably somewhere in the 50s or 60s if we go back into Withcast. So that is something that is pretty relevant too. So, but yeah, thank you guys for watching this episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. See you guys in the next one. Peace.